So welcome everybody to Talent Talks for Small Businesses. This is episode 3 of our second season. In the first season, we actually gave 30 talks on webinars related to what we called tou- tough decisions for business owners, COVID-19. And you'll find that in our website, in our library, a host of topics that really will help you navigate as employers in business situations related to people, as well as during the COVID times. Today, our topic is focusing on employee experience, why it's critical now. We started this series to really help answer a need for small business owners and HR expertise to help you with strategies and to balance the practical aspects of running your business and solving the people problems that you experience. If you like us, you can tag us at PeopleBright or hashtag or number sign TTSB 2021. I would like to acknowledge our Chamber, East Gwillimbury Chamber of Commerce, who's been sponsoring us since June and helping us host these events. Thank you, Lauren Davis. Do you want to come forward and share a few things?
Hi, sure. Yes. Hi, everybody. Welcome. And thanks for joining us today for this webinar. We decided to partner with Hilda and PeopleBright back in June of last year. I guess she was partway through her series at that time. And we recognized that the topics that she was sharing with businesses and business owners was really important and relevant, we felt, to all the businesses in East Gwillimbury, but as well within the region. So we have been promoting and working with Hilda to promote these webinars. And I mean, there have been some fantastic topics from, top HR challenges, difficult conversations you have to have with your employees, etc. We've got a whole list of recorded webinars that you can even access that I'm sure Hilda will show you at the end. But thank you, Hilda, for allowing us to partner with you. And I hope everybody enjoys the webinar today.
Thank you. I'm excited because we have three panelists with me today, with me, and some of their ideas collectively will give you really a great exposure to why you really need to focus on the employee experience. I want to just share with you two people who are my producers, my production team, Diane Matthew and Fernanda. I don't know how to pronounce the name properly, so I won't make a mistake in sharing that. And Fernanda, if you have any questions you want to kind of mention to them privately, you can look for them. Diane, Matthew, and Fernanda. If you We encourage you to use the chat box to share your ideas and thoughts because this is about sharing and learning from each other. So today we're focusing on 3 key aspects. The key challenges that leaders need to address now with employee experience. Second thing is to discuss why creating an employee experience is now a key focus, and then giving you tips and strategies on how to be more employee focused. We want to save about 20 minutes to 30 minutes at the end for open discussion. Thank you very much for those who, when they registered, put some questions in. The theme of wellness seemed to be really prevalent, and we will address some of these questions. Feel free to put questions in the chat box, or you can come out and unmute yourself and have that discussion at the end. What I want to do is kind of share with you the impacts of the pandemic on the workplace. During 2020, we started to see the stress on people where the mental wellness was really impacted. And we're now talking of it being 15 months onward. So it's not just a one-time exposure, it's chronic. People are trying to work from home and they're either balancing life with families and elderly, as well as those that are single and working in isolation. So this whole concept of working remotely and working in a hybrid situation where sometimes you go into work, sometimes you don't, has been really impacted. And then that's really shifted the focus of saying, let's look at employee experience. So for those of you who don't understand what employee experience means, is that we need to now step up and look at what the experience of the employee is and make it great. And people say, well, why should I do that? You know, we talked about users' experiences, and we talked about client-focused experiences. Today, we are talking about employee experiences. And why should we be doing that? So I want to set the stage for you so that we can share with you some of the concerns that you should be having and addressing. And it is all about making it a wow for the employees. So I want to share with you my guest for today. Malik Sitsky is the founder and president of Healthcare Event Planning. This is an event planning company that helps organizations who are doing healthcare event planning. She has a background in biochemistry and has her master's in health administration. But her passion is helping people come to events and learn from a healthcare perspective. She teaches event marketing at Conestoga College and has done an annual wellness retreat. So through that experience of doing that annually, she, in COVID, decided to launch Healthy Corporate Canada. It's a program for companies designed to assist them with some of those wellness activities during the pandemic. And then we've got Sarah Cotter. Sarah is the senior employment lawyer at Minkin Employment Law. She's an expert at law from a human resources perspective. Wrongful dismissals, constructive dismissals, human rights violations, workplace harassment, and a host of others. She is a wealth of knowledge of hearing what employers and employees are saying about their experiences. So I think you're going to be very interested to hear her insights on how people are feeling the impacts of COVID during this time. She has represented clients in the Superior Court, as well as human rights tribunals and the Ministry of Labor. Then there's Perry Najati. She's an executive recruiter with People Bright Consulting. She utilizes her 20 plus years of experience and expertise in helping clients find the top talented people. She does it in a very concierge level of approach in matching businesses with talent. She's very, very astute at understanding changing needs of the environment, of the industry, as well as the people that are hiring and wanting to work in top companies. So her insights will be very invaluable as well. Then there's Helen Patterson. She is the founder of Life Works Well. She's got 20 years of passion and experience in creating workplace cultures and driving results based on that. She has worked for branding companies like CIBC, ADP Canada, Foot Locker, and others. She is also a lead editor for the Thomson Reuters books on employment policies at work and terminations. And that's an amazing thing, which she downplays. So I'm upplaying it here for you, Helen. She believes that delivering HR from the heart is so vital and important. And you'll hear that as she speaks today on this. Then there's me. I am the president and chief people officer of People Bright Consulting. I've got 25 years of HR experience and I'm a serial entrepreneur. That kind of sounds evil, but I love what I do and I love building businesses. I am the creator of a concept called Rev Up. And I won't get into it too much today, but it's a framework to help people really build trust and inclusion and confidence in their leadership. And I do a training program called People Management Skills. I'm passionate about helping businesses create healthy workplaces, similar to Helen. My husband and I, in a previous lifetime, created an engineering firm called iTrans Consulting, and we were recognized as one of the best workplaces in Canada, top 10 twice. So I really do know my people skills, and if I can make engineers really connect with their staff, then I know what I'm doing. I am the host of a podcast called Rev Up Your Potential with Hilda Gann. It is a series of webinars with entrepreneurs, the ones next door, not the Bill Gateses of the world, but the ones next door. And if you like to learn from others through stories, you'll love the Rev Up Your Potential podcast, because we talk about the successes of entrepreneurs and their struggles along the way. So what I want to get into now is to really talk about 4 main themes. Number 1 is mental wellness and staff. The second one is employee engagement. The third is about investing in employees. Where will you do this? And then what's the future of work? What's the remote work hybrid environment going to look like? Statistics show that approximately 50 to 60% of people really want a hybrid work environment. Even the introverts who you think might want to just work at home, people want to come to work, but the ratio is probably work 3 days at home and 2 days in the office. So so that's what we're going to do. First, though, I want to get a sense of what people are thinking. And so what I want to do is a poll. So this is the first question we want to ask you. We want to ask you is identify what you see as the challenges, the key challenges of businesses with employees during the pandemic. So this is a multiple choice, pick all that apply. And we're going to get started. So some of you are starting to vote. Okay, I'll just give it another 20 seconds. It looks like about 80% of people have voted. Okay, so I'm going to end the poll now. And these are the results. Mental health challenges, 90% of you said that mental health challenges and focusing on employee engagement are the key things. The third one is rethinking the future in a hybrid environment. And we're hoping that some of the questions we have for you today and answers will give you some insight into that. I didn't know how to find my second question. So the second question is strategies adopted. And so if you want to, some people are going to start to answer the question, what are some strategies your business is adopting to enhance employees' experience? And again, pick all that apply. Okay, just give it another 10 seconds. Most of you have already responded. Just a couple of people left. Okay, I'm going to stop that now. So here's the results. It looks like the key ones are adopting a culture of caring, inclusion, and trust, fostering strong, positive leadership, and having clear communication of the company's values, direction, and activities. 75% said providing mental health strategies, 63 well-defined policies and for remote and hybrid work environments, and 50% said training. And we have one more left. Okay, do you want to do the third one for me, Mela? Because again, I had struggles with doing that.
Done.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
This is a team effort. What can I say? So, how satisfied are you that your company is doing enough to create a positive employee experience? So, I've got one company that says they're doing a great job. And now, of course, that's getting lower. All right, half of you have already responded. You're getting really fast at this. Just a couple more seconds and then we'll close this. Okay, so 38% say they're doing a great job. 38% say they're doing a good job, but they could do more. And then 13 adequate, but not enough. And then inadequate and think people will leave when they can. And I think that's what we really want to prevent is these bottom three, toxic and people can't wait to leave. Nobody's doing that. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing and then get going with the questions. So thank you, everybody. I would like to call on my panelists. So the first question we want to talk about. Now, again, we're focusing on the hybrid and the remote work situation, and we're focusing on creating employee experiences. You need to focus on employee experience. If you want your people to stay, they need to feel they're valued and included. So I'm going to start with Malik, and then other people will respond as well. What are some of the key concerns you are finding with respect to mental wellness of the staff? Not just your staff, but in general. You know, you're exposed and talking to other people. So what do you see there, Malik?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. And I wanted to, just sort of set the context, and that is the Center for Addiction and Mental Health has reported that there's been a 50% decline in mental health since the start of COVID. And, I've heard from many businesses that there are morale issues. People are feeling uncertain about the future. And I think what ends up happening is if the companies are not being reassuring, if they're not communicating effectively like you pointed out before, if they don't have in place wellness programming, mental health resources available to their employees either on their website or in the newsletter, if mental health issues aren't really a conversation that is safe and allowed to occur, then a lot of employees are feeling disenchanted and almost feeling like, okay, the employer is using COVID as an excuse. Whereas really what they need to be doing is ramping up and providing a lot more supports to their employees.
Helen, do you want to add something, and then I'll ask the
Yeah,
others too.
it's so interesting because before we started today, I was just telling a little story about a conversation I was having last night with one of the CEOs from one of my clients. And here we are a year and a bit later, and he's worried about burnout, and he's worried about, at first Zoom was new because for this client, they have 3 offices all over Canada. So, hey, we can bring everybody together more using Zoom, but really talking about he's so done with it himself. I don't want to be on another Zoom call. And there's all kinds of other focus issues with this kind of technology. But I think that it's real. And as soon as this was happening, we were already in a bit of crisis around mental health and wellness and burnout a couple of years prior to COVID and the pandemic. And it has really exacerbated. Like, I think if your work culture was already a little dysfunctional or there was disengagement, it's very much highlighted it even more. And then those that thought they were okay are starting to see some issues. And if you're not, like, one of the things you'll hear from me is proactive versus reactive, because you need to get out ahead of it. We're going to talk about future work later, but we can't be in a reactive mode forever. Like, you need to be thinking about what do we have? What are the gaps in support? And having those conversations, which Malik, I think, your organization is like, we're finally having them. The stigma's gone. Well, it's not gone completely, but there's a reality now that people can experience from leadership down. And so I think it's highlighted the need for the supports and the connections and the discussions and conversations about it, and being open about it, and not thinking it's only, for a few people in the organization. It's real. So that's sort of what I think about, is like, really get out there and push for the discussion and communication about the reality of it.
Sarah Perry, thoughts?
Yeah, I think that the struggle for work-life balance has been an ongoing issue. And I think when COVID hit, that completely, a wrench was thrown into that, because for many people who are working remotely, that separation between work and home has just been obliterated. And I know myself, and in the legal profession, I'm getting emails from lawyers at all hours of the night. And when I'm speaking to my colleagues, everyone's dealing with the same thing. They have kids at home. They have, now they're dealing with remote schooling and things, and it's pushing the day. So whatever, couldn't get done within regular hours is now happening at nighttime. And I think that, the burnout, like that can't be sustained indefinitely. And thinking that it's been 15 months, it's mind blowing. But I think, this is just making everything more intense, and the focus on mental health really needs to be there because people are struggling, and if people were sort of managing but in a difficult way before, like this is really tipping people over the edge.
I was talking to someone earlier today, and she said, "You know how we say I'm working from home? I'm actually living at work." And I thought,
It's true.
yeah, that's so true. And,
Mhm.
and so that blurring line is really, really hard. And who would ever thought when I remember the early days in March and they say, yeah, we're extending, the spring break by an extra week. And this may last for 18 months. And I said, yeah, like really? And I mean, they were real. They're real. Thoughts, Perry?
Yeah, so one thing I've heard from a few clients, especially the male counterparts, is they actually have a lot more sympathy for stay-at-home moms trying to um, herd the children, feed them while getting on a work call or trying to get other activities done because they never thought it was going to ever happen to them. So one thing I've heard from some of the male counterparts who typically used to go off to work, now that they're stuck at home working, they recognize now you can't keep kids quiet. They will knock on your door, they will barge in. And it's a reality. So they had a little bit more sympathy, if not a lot more sympathy for their partners who are staying at home and are living at home now and taking care of the kids. Now the husbands are doing the same tasks. And there's just been that aha moment, like, okay, I finally get why you're exhausted when I come home from work, right? They're feeling it a lot more.
I remember in the early days when we were having meetings and we could see people's homes, right? And their children or their dogs or their cats walking past. And that was kind of cute. And now it's just normal. But it was kind of novel before and it's accepted normal. Malik, before we move on to the next question, I mentioned that you started Healthy Corporate Canada. And I think it's important for people to know some of the things that are out there. And maybe you could share a little bit about your program.
Oh, sure. I'd be happy to. So, Healthy Corporate Canada was really born out of the pandemic and the fact that employees are working remotely and they're not able to connect in traditional senses. Gone are the, spontaneous water cooler conversations or, let's pop into your cubicle and have a quick meeting. So now everything has to be staged. And because people are feeling disconnected, and then there's the overlay of perhaps not feeling safe, and safety is not just from a medical point of view, whether you'll catch COVID, let's say, but also just safe as in, I'm wondering like what's happening at work, are we going to be furloughed or are hours going to be cut? So all of those things, came into mind. And as Hilda had alluded to, I did have a group of practitioners who I'd been working with for several years during my wellness retreats. And my practitioners, some of them were yogis, fitness gurus, mindset coaches, physiotherapy, social workers, psychotherapists, HR professionals. And it was a really robust array of professionals. And I thought, if we can get them together and offer lunch and learns to clients, wouldn't that be nice? So we created this program, and they have access to wellness resources. There's a platform where they can really go to town and see all the resources that are available to them. And certain companies are opting for the traditional lunch and learn, where if they're attending a lecture, they actually have lunch delivered to their homes. So so far it's been really nice. I'm targeting more small and medium sized businesses because I'm finding those businesses had nothing in place necessarily, and really felt the need to. Where some of the larger companies may have had something, but and they may or may not be happy with that something. But I'm sort of starting small and going big. And right now I'm launching it in Quebec and Ottawa because I am bilingual and several of my practitioners are bilingual. And I'm sure, the Francophone community needs it as much as the Anglophone community.
Thank you. Thank you. One thing I want to touch upon too is that we're talking about mental health. We're saying it is a number one problem. They predicted that globally that would be the major disease of 2020 and probably now going into 2021. In this all is you as a business owner, you as a manager, you as an HR. How are you supporting people through this? Are you acknowledging them? Are you skilled enough to have that dialogue that will build that trust, that will build that empathy? Because that is, again, part of the employee experience. In the Hayes report, it says 50% of people are contemplating leaving their companies when they can safely, like post pandemic, because they feel a disconnect. What does that mean? Disconnect. Disconnect means you don't really care about me. You don't make me feel valued. And I don't feel a sense of loyalty to continue to stay. So, but I'm staying because I have mouths to feed. I need some security. So think about that as one of your key challenges as business owners, as HR. Now, I know there were a couple of comments in the pop-up box. Fernand, I don't need you to read all of them, but is there one or two that you might want to bring forward, and then we'll move on to our second question?
Yeah, for sure. We do have actually a question from Anne. How does an employee keep the nearing retirement workforce engaged and wanting to stay and continue to be productive? Many of my coworkers are very productive, they're tech savvy, but feel that retirement is so close for them that due to their increasing workload and giving a serious consideration to retirement soon, even though they really like what they do and want to stay productive but cannot sustain their workloads.
Um, I can see Helen chomping at the bit, so we'll have you answer, and then we'll move on to the next question. Go ahead, Helen.
No, I just think that's really interesting because it's all about engagement, and that thinking about, especially near end of career or before you go to your next chapter, so to speak, you've been in the workplace for so long, so you've already seen all those ups and downs, like recessions and 9/11. Like you've been through other challenges, but this one was still so different. And layering on all that extra work is not, no wonder they want to pack it in. I'm like, let's be real, because they've just been thrown so much more. And there's still ageism. So it's really contradictory sometimes. But I think that it's related to everything. Is our leaders helping their employees be successful? Are they providing, like, without being resilient? Are you providing space in the day? Because what Perry mentioned earlier, and others, Sarah, like there's lack of boundaries when you are working and living in the same space, right? So it's really those sometimes tactical things that organizations also need to help their employees with, which are those, setting those boundaries. If I'm going to send an email and I realize, oh my gosh, it's at 8:00 at night, but that's because my life is like that. I'm going to schedule it to be sent at 9 a.m. the next day. There's so many little things. And it's like, without setting up what kind of culture it is. I mean, there's so much wrapped into this, the whole belonging and the uniqueness of everybody's experience. Like when you think about Harvard Business Review just wrote an article on doing hybrid right. And that's like a little different, but you need to look at individual human concerns versus institutional ones. And so it's not easy. This is not easy stuff we're talking about. It seems like, let's just create, work-life harmony and everything will be fine. But we have not looked at mental health issues as the first starting point, right? Or the physical self, psychological safety. Do you feel belonging? So I think that's a long-winded answer, but it's about making sure that they have the supports, everybody, to ensure that they're able to feel energized. Like people want to show up and be excited about work. So it's definitely so linked, the whole belonging, psychological safety, feeling like they can speak up if like I'm at my wit's end, I can't do one more thing. So please, like, let me say that to you. Let me have an open environment where I can. But that's just not the reality, unfortunately.
And when
I don't know if that answered the question, but it was more of a rant.
I think we have not equipped our leaders and our coworkers how to deal with, being respectful and treat people with understanding and build that kind of trust. Thank you. I'm going to go on to our second question. We are focusing on that employee experience, and we need to try to help make it better. So we're touching on a whole bunch of points, and as Helen says, it is also an individualistic approach, but it's a systemic approach too. And so if your culture is already, in need of fixing, you do have to address that. I'm going to ask Sarah first, is to share your experiences with employees and, in your case, employers, about how we can, what are you seeing, and then how can we better engage them? And then I'll ask Perry, and then I'll open it up for the rest of us.
Yeah, so I'm fortunate in my practice that I'm able to advise both employers and employees. So I get a lot of information from both sides, and it is interesting and it helps me when I'm advising. But what I'm hearing from employees is just that they're stressed out and frazzled in ways that, they've never experienced before. I mean, we've all had to balance and juggle home responsibilities and work responsibilities. But with this pandemic, as we've been talking about, the boundaries have eroded, and where we would normally have support from schools or teachers or family members to help with some of these balls that we're juggling, employees are left trying to juggle all of them on their own. And by working remotely, there's this isolation that they're experiencing from their coworkers, from management, from the leaders, and there's a lot of just general stress and dissatisfaction. And I think also there's a lot of fear about job security. Are they going to be put on a temporary layoff? Are they going to eventually be terminated? Like, what's going on with the business, with the economy? And it's creating this sort of like melting pot of stress and tension. And going hand in hand with that, I think, is this feeling a lot of employees feel like their efforts and their that they're not being recognized for the work that they're doing and for the challenges that they are facing and all of these balls that they are juggling, that it's being sort of taken for granted, and that their years of loyalty that they've shown their employers, and in particular over the last 15 months, that they're stretching themselves, and they don't necessarily feel like that's being acknowledged, or being mentioned, and it is causing a lot of stress and dissatisfaction. And as you said, Hilda, I mean, a lot of people, now is not necessarily the best time to be looking for another job. So a lot of employees are staying put where they are. But, a lot of times when people are coming to me and saying, listen, this is going on, is this, do you think this is constructive dismissal? What do you think I should do? One of the things that I always ask is, what is your overall objective? Do you want to continue working with this company, and do you want me to help you fix it so that you can continue on with them? Or are you looking to be exited out? And more I'm finding people are wanting to exit and they want to move on. And it's unfortunate because a lot of times, I'm dealing with people who've been, 5, 10, 15, 20 years with a company. And, but it seems like, these changes of the last year and a bit have made, they've put a microscope on certain things that maybe were always there, or maybe not. But I think the perceived lack of understanding from employers is driving a lot of dissatisfaction for employees.
No, I have to agree with that. And I find a lot of candidates, especially the top tier candidates in most companies, they're using this opportunity during COVID to really evaluate the companies that they're partnered with. So the workplace was not enough. Now they're actually taking this internally and saying, am I really happy where I'm at? And often I hear from some of the brightest talent I've come across is they're not happy at all. So they're like knocking, please find me a position outside of this. But then on the same token, top-notch companies don't want the responsibility of bringing someone on during a pandemic. They just feel like, oh my God, this resume is fantastic. We'd love to have him or her. We just don't feel we could provide that safety net, as Malik mentioned, that it's not typical recruitment as it used to be back in the day, but I am seeing more strong talent evaluating their positions and recognizing it isn't really the job. They're absolutely not happy with the work, and they'll be open to more opportunities than ever before. It's a unique thing I'm seeing.
I wanted to actually add something that I read the other day, which I thought was very shocking, and that is Basecamp, which is a project management software company. A third of their employees just basically announced on social media that they're quitting. And I thought, and that was because of, maybe it was the diversity and inclusion that tipped the balance, and the company's unwillingness to, to look into that and to, I guess, take away responsibility from the diversity and inclusion officer and put it onto a people officer. But just imagine the angst that there must have been feeling, and for a third of the company to just say, you know what, we're out of here.
I mean, and I think the CEO said that, if you don't like what I've done, leave. And they did. The next day they said bye, right? Yeah. any other thoughts? Like, what are some of the things, strategies that you would also include that people be looking at to really address this like, employee experience?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think employers need to be really cognizant of showing their appreciation of the efforts of their employees. And, it doesn't necessarily have to be, okay, here's a bonus or here's, something, but sometimes even just words, just saying, listen, I really appreciate you stepping up. I know that this has been challenging. I know that you're dealing with X, Y, and Z, and we want you to know that we see it and that we appreciate it. I think that is really critical. I think trying to have positive experience, even sending like gift cards for someone can order in food, just these little things. They're small gestures, but they speak volumes, and I think those are the things that employees are looking for. And one of the questions, I think Anne had a comment about more work that is being put on the shoulders of employees, and if you're close to retirement, like is it worth it to continue on? And I think we've had this slogan, we're in this together, and yes, we are in this together. We're all going through this. Employers need to make critical financial decisions, and sometimes that does include terminating or temporary layoffs, and it means that the same amount of work is then being distributed amongst fewer people, and those are necessary decisions to make, and obviously employers have to do what they have to do, because keeping the business going a going concern is critical. But I think there has to be some appreciation of what those decisions mean for employees, and for employees who have a full workload, to then be handed, even if it's just 5 or 10% more responsibility on top of what they're doing, that can be very difficult for an employee who is already overworked and was overworked pre-pandemic and is now really struggling. So I think employers, if decisions need to be made where it is going to increase the workload, I think there has to be an openness or an acknowledgement of what that is doing to the employee. And if it can mean sort of, a financial incentive to help offset that, just so that the employee feels acknowledged and appreciated, then that would be important. And maybe it's coming up with other financial decisions that aren't going to necessarily drastically increase the workload on each person, because eventually that one extra thing is going to be what is going to break that employee.
I would add it's a dialogue. So at the senior level, you announce something, but then the ripple effect, you then get personal and say, "Hey, and I know that this has put an extra workload on you. I've asked you to do this. Is that manageable for you? If not, how do we make this work?" I mean, that simple question means you care about me and you're including me in some solution rather than dictating me and patting me down the back for just picking it up, right? So it's having that dialogue, it's having that, building that trusting relationship and acknowledging. So I think going one step further and do your announcement, but then find that right balance of making sure that the people that are affected have that touch point with you individually.
Yeah, I think communication is very critical, and I think if some of these changes are being made, I think if the intention is that they be temporary, just to deal with the current pandemic and the impact of that, I think letting employees know that they are temporary measures is helpful as well, because there's nothing worse than feeling like you're stuck in a situation that you don't like. But if you know that it truly is going to be temporary, if it is going to be temporary, then I think psychologically that is helpful too, because if we know that we can push ourselves a little bit, but then eventually things will go back, or it'll be a little bit easier. It's more manageable to deal with.
So one of the things in the literature, and this is the third question, one of the things in the literature is talking about investing. In the challenge in 2021 is companies need to make an investment in their people. That's part of that user experience. And what are some of those strategies that should be included? It's not just about terminating people, but what about the user experience post any changes like that? So I'm going to ask Helen to respond first, Malik, and then open it up.
Yeah, sorry, of course, my daughter was just FaceTiming me. This is the reality we're living in, right? So I just ignored that. Hopefully it's nothing major. Honestly, this is our life these days. I have a couple of examples, and I mean, there's so much, we could talk about this all day, but there are, like, a lot of the clients I support are smaller businesses. And so, you know, you see all these great initiatives in the Fortune 500s and large companies that have huge departments, and they have, you know, recognition programs and appreciation and gratitude cards sent out and all kinds of wonderful things. So when you're smaller, you know, you often don't even maybe have an EAP or employee assistance or employee family assistance program, which is, you know, some of that needs to change anyway. That's a story for a discussion for another time about what is in those offers. But, you know, there's things you can do if you're creative enough. And so one of the clients I worked with, the first thing they did when the work from home started was they gave a certain amount of money, and it was a lot for the amount, like $500. What do you need to get your home office set up properly? Do you need a printer? Do you need this? You want to take, you know, chairs? What do you need? And I think that this is more not so much the mental health, because the physical health is important too, in that, you know, if you're not ergonomically set up properly. I do have one situation that I'm dealing with right now where this employee wasn't asking for help, and even though it was offered, right? So the proactive again versus reactive, think through what this is meaning, what supports physically, mentally, socially. I talk about soul, spirit. And, you know, again, it's about feeling like you are in an environment that you can speak up. And that's the belonging and the psychological safety in an organization that, hey, manager, I'm on here 8 to 10 hours a day, and now my back and my neck are killing. And, you know, do they have the comfort to speak up? First of all, the manager, you know, making sure they're having those one-on-ones. So low cost, like being proactive, you can do, there's free webinars for that, you know, set yourself up properly. There's tons of meditation resources and mindfulness resources that if you don't have the budget for it, if you have an HR person or someone that is helping with people culture, that they can actually proactively set it up, send it out. We've done that. With the equity, diversity, inclusion, and belonging, also the, you know, this last year with everything that's been going on with, you know, Black Lives Matter, with, you know, the recent hatred against Asians, like there's been so much in that space that had needed to be, that was being a light shone on it as well, like open up the dialogue on that. And what we did in a couple of places is we did monthly coffee chats. So to get that connection, like forget about work, it's still related in how you want to create a culture, but pick a topic and, you know, a resource, a shared TED talk, a little article, and then it brings people together in a different way. And that has been really successful in that it's not another meeting, another like, let's talk about budget cuts, and like, let's just kind of bring people together in a different way. And we've had them linked to diversity topics mainly, but it's been really, people have loved it. So again, thinking about some of those different ways of bringing the connection and also to the gratitude. They've had, you know, around the holiday season, they did, you know, a luncheon where everybody ordered. They gave them all money to order, but they got on and had the lunch together, because you don't, you know, you're not going out to a restaurant. And, you know, gratitude days, you know, trying out like some form of recognition. There have been more flowers sent on special occasions than in the past, but, you know, I think that that's where it's like, take a moment and say, well, what can we do that's cost effective, but that's meaningful? So those were just a couple of examples that we've had from an investment and looking at shared learning experiences. So we did partner with the Canadian Centre for Diversity and Inclusion and did a number of sessions with some of my clients on that. So again, it's some of the tried and true, you know, the things that worked before, you know, maybe bring them back in a different way. Again, everything is easier said than done, right? You have to kind of try different things. So
I'm going to let Malik go now and then get a few other comments and then move on to the next question.
Sure.
Thanks Helen.
So, I mean, my angle would be that you really need to invest in wellness programming. And basically, Helen had talked about this ergonomic design that we're on 8 to 10 hours. So, wouldn't it be great to have a physiotherapist come in to say, okay, so here's your workstation design. Some of you are sitting down, others of you have a stand up desk. These are the positions you need to take. This is how, shoulders back, every 50 minutes or so, these are the stretches that you should be doing. So, all that kind of stuff, because what we thought was a temporary solution working on your dining room table has now been a 15-month thing. 15 months where you're perhaps not set up properly. So I would say that those supports, so yes, the mental health, the gratitude, the mindset coaching, the nutrition, the importance of sleep, but ergonomic design is something that shouldn't be taken for granted. And then, tactics on emotional resilience are also very important. Another thing I wanted to add was sort of some exemplary thing that some clients of mine have done. So one of them is a pharmaceutical company, and what they recognized quite quickly is that the psychotherapy dollars were coming out fast. So they literally doubled the amount of money. Now, of course, they're in a position to do so, but they doubled the amount of money available. And then they realized that for a certain cadre of people, that even the doubling wasn't enough. These people were suffering far more than the rest of the workforce. They identified them as a certain subset of people who were really the sales representatives, who were suddenly their whole jobs were just completely different, and they were very depressed. So they set aside, they earmarked some additional money for them. They haven't yet put that into place, but they're looking into and seeing how they can juggle to get that money. Another thing they recognized was that the children who are at home and maybe younger, like the 5, 6, 7-year olds, once they're done and they have, let's say, recess, they don't know what to do with themselves. So they set up what's called a virtual babysitting club, and they partnered with Broadway. So now there's Broadway actors that are entertaining the employees of this company. And why not? Because Broadway's not working. So, initially you wouldn't ever be able to reach out to Broadway. They'd be in rehearsals and whatnot, or they'd be on because it's May. But now these, singers, actors are entertaining the children. And I think that's brilliant. It's really out of the box thinking. And I think, a company like that, they did a survey recently, and the employees, over 80% of them said, we feel our company is doing anything and everything. They're exploring all options to make sure that we feel cared for, that there is an investment there.
And I think that's the key, is that people feel cared for. And one size won't fit all companies, that you need to check into your company, the pulse, the culture, and to do something about it. I will just make one quick comment, ask the other two if they have anything, and keep moving, because I want to make sure we have time for questions from other people. The investment in your managers, your leaders, they are not equipped to deal as leaders of COVID pandemic times. And even before, statistics show that top 3 reasons people leave, one of them is not having enough challenge as an employee, having a toxic work environment, and bad managers. So there should be some investment in helping leaders be people managers. And that's my comment on that. And quickly, Sarah and Perry, and I want to go on to question 4.
I think Charles had a message earlier or a comment about that this is actually a leadership crisis, not just about the employee experience. And for small business owners or mid-sized business owners, they don't have the tools in their box to figure out what to do during the pandemic. So they do need as much resources as leaders of a company. They need to be the ambassadors of their organization. If they're not taking care of themselves, how are they in a position to take care of their managers or their support staff, right?
Yeah.
So it is a leadership crisis. They do need support. And I don't see a lot of organization addressing the founders who are also under a lot of stress, like financial stress, making sure they're not letting go of their employees that they've had on for 10, 12 years, but the business decision, and it's hard for a lot of founders. So there's got to be some empathy for the founders as well, not just focusing fully on the employee experience.
Okay, I'm going to ask this next question of Sarah, and this is all about legal. How, given these COVID times and the uncertainty and leaders needing to make decisions like laying off people, terminating people, a couple of questions, thoughts that if you could share with us. How should employers navigate the delicate issue of transitioning employees from layoffs back to work or from layoffs to termination?
Yeah, it's definitely been a very challenging time for everyone over the last little bit. For employers that put employees on these temporary layoffs, I think those employees, if possible, should be recalled, as soon as possible. There's a case that has come out that seems to suggest that these temporary layoffs, which were done in accordance with the changes to the Employment Standards Act and the infectious disease emergency leave, may be potentially triggering a constructive dismissal from a common law standpoint. So from, there's always a bit of a lag time between cases that are going through the court process, and this has been such a new experience for everyone in every walk of life, but for lawyers too, and employment law has been changing. And from an employer standpoint, I would suggest that if you can bring these employees back from layoff, do it as soon as possible. In terms of how to bring them back, I think that there's going to be a lot of emotions that these employees are going to be experiencing. I mean, I think some are going to be very relieved to be back, and I think recalling them will just, be very important to them. But I think it's going to be important to take steps to reintegrate everyone and to rebuild that relationship that was severed for however long the temporary layoff lasted. And, having opportunities for employees to reconnect and to sort of build that rapport and relationship is going to be very important. For some employees, I think probably are not everyone is going to be coming back. I think that hard decisions will need to be made, and some people will need to be terminated. There's different strategies as lawyers that we employ when we're advising our employer clients in terms of the packages that should be offered. And I think right now, just to have some sensitivity, I think, to employees who are being terminated and the challenges that they face. And I think if you're presenting an offer out there, it's be reasonable in the offer that's being presented. I think if you're lowballing these employees, if you're giving statutory minimums only when they're entitled to additional notice, I think that's going to create a lot of bad feelings. And but I think if an employer comes out with a package that shows some respect, shows an acknowledgement, especially if it's a long-term employee of the loyalty that the employee had, I think that is going to be really important to minimize risk. Because a lot of times when I'm advising, let's focus on the employees. A lot of times, like, emotions are running high, and I can advise based on the law, because obviously as a lawyer that's what I do. But when employees are making decisions and giving me instructions, they're not just focused on the law. They are focused on their perception and their emotions and how they feel they've been treated. And when employees come in and they you can be upset about certain actions that your employer has taken, but if overall they know that they've been treated well, they're more likely to accept what's being offered, or to to want to have closure. But I think when employers feel that they have been wronged, it's that emotion that propels them, even when sometimes from a legal standpoint, there's not really a lot of remedies that are available. But it's the emotion that really, forces people into certain actions, and can create a lot of acrimony between employers and employees where it doesn't necessarily need to be that way.
Cool. Helen, being an
Yeah.
HR person, you and I probably have a quick comment, but
Yeah.
I'll just let you have the quick comment, and then we'll go to
I'll
the
just,
last question.
I'll be quick on it too, because having been involved in managing restructuring programs at CIBC and, large organizations, and then now advising smaller clients, I've always said last impressions matter too. So first impressions, like, what's that employee experience like when you're hired and it's all exciting and you get your little tchotchkes and your, package, hopefully, in a great orientation and onboarding in a real world, right? But, last impressions matter. And I will say, I've been let go of a couple. Actually, once I was 8 months pregnant. Another one I was during my mat leave. So, you have your own experiences. And in both cases, it ended up working out well. And the way I was treated kept me a client of, you know, a potential customer, a future ambassador of the organization. You know, most people understand it's a tough time right now, but I've seen large organizations treat employees very poorly, and they have the funds. And it's like, why are you pissing them off when they would be a champion of your organization going forward? Just, you know, treat them well. It's a very difficult emotional time. You know,
And
people
that doesn't
compare it to
cost
marriage.
money. That doesn't
Yeah, it
cost money.
doesn't cost money.
How you make people feel, that doesn't cost money. You know, so train people to do that effectively. Hire people who care about people. These are really inexpensive strategies that can really, really go a long way.
Yeah.
I'm going to talk now about the future. And I'm going to ask each of you, starting with Perry, what do you see as the future of the workplace and the employee in the next 1 to 2 years?
So I think there's a lot of panic. So everyone's going to enter full panic mode. I think it's very important as founders of companies or HR strategists coming on board to support these companies to provide clear direction, what the steps need to look like, because many people don't have a clue, and we're all figuring this out together, but just being very empathetic about how you're trying to re-engage employees to come back to work, creating a safe environment from obviously the virus. So it has to be a very healthy, conscious place for people to return to. We do hear a lot of discussion about the hybrid workplace. That can mean many things, but it really does mean optimizing the health of the employee and the company overall. So if you are going to have staggered coming in and leaving, it should also be where they're productive hours, they're more effective hours, and you are at all times making sure safety is paramount. Not increasing the workload just because they're coming back to the office setting. So just gradual re-entry into the workplace and checking in with people in a more regular pattern. Even though they're now at the office doesn't mean you stop checking in on them. So just taking care of mental health, I think it's a very pressing matter. But the physical workplace will be a hybrid. I don't imagine anyone other than if you're in a lab setting, you're not going to be coming into the workplace as much as you imagined you were going to when you took the position. So I do see some kind of gradual reentry, a lot of panic, a lot of uncertainty. And as strategists to come on board, just give them clear guidelines. They need direction. And I think our job is to provide that instead of holding back information, waiting for them to ask for it. Just give out the information, let them roll with it, and be a partner as their business revamps again.
Who wants to go next?
I can go next. I echo Perry's statements, but I also think from a teaching perspective, because I'm a college professor, that there's going to be more online teaching. Some of the students didn't like it and they wanted to be in the campus, but many of them were able to, from an international perspective, take advantage of sessions that weren't there originally. So student demand is going to, I think, push that envelope. I think avant-garde companies will continue to invest in corporate wellness even after people are back, because as Perry says, it's going to be a staggered approach. It's not going to be everyone who's going to be coming in at all times. And then another big trend that I see is there's going to be far more diversity and inclusion officers that are going to be hired. And that is definitely a trend on the way up.
Cool. Helen?
Oh, completely agree with everybody. And I think, you know, we were moving in this direction already. I think this just put it over. It exacerbated, like it just brought it to the forefront sooner, this hybrid workplace, work from home, flexibility in work, results oriented work versus where, like, doesn't, as long as there's results and you're getting things done, it shouldn't, you know, matter. I think there's a lot of advocates for that for a long time. I think the technology issues, I mean, obviously there's still more and more tech being developed every day, and that, you know, we see it as something that's supposed to be enabling us to be more successful, yet it can still suck the life out of you in some cases. So finding that those resources and how to use these things effectively. And I really think Mercer's is just came out with something called Mercer 360. Malik, you may be aware of this too, that it's really sort of the next generation of offer, in addition to your benefits, traditional benefits, where it's a marketplace. And so we're going to see that, to your point, as you can go on and if you sign up for it, you could get a physiotherapist remotely for $60 versus going in. And so how is that going to change what's available? I think that's pretty exciting, actually, because you can leverage the power of that, many companies sharing. So I think that's going to be interesting to look at. So for smaller businesses, looking at Mercer 360 and other large companies are now offering more on the proactive mental health wellness strategies. It's holistic, it's financial, it's mental, it's physical. I think it's exciting, and we need it more than ever. So I think that we'll see a lot of that.
Sarah.
Yeah, so I think that the hybrid workplace is definitely here to stay. I think it would be very difficult to go back to what we had before. I mean, some jobs, really do, you need to be on site, but I think having that flexibility where people can work from home for a couple of days, in the office a couple of days, I think that's the way it's going to be. And I think that their employers are going to have to maintain a certain level of flexibility, because employees have been accustomed to working remotely and being able to have a little bit of more flexibility in their days. And I think that that's something that you can't just sort of take that away from employees. I think that's going to create a lot of negativity. And I think to keep employees happy, you want to make sure that some element of flexibility is built in, and again, with the compassion and the understanding of what employees are doing. They're not just employees. We have other lives, we have other things that are going on, and I think the needs of businesses are going to change, in that a lot of services can be provided remotely now, and I think businesses are have had to pivot, and I think we're not necessarily going to go back to the way things were done before. I mean, I know from the way we provide services at our firm, when I was meeting with clients, it was almost always in person. Everyone came to the firm, and I met with them and all that. And it was great. And, and for the last 15 months, I mean, I've been doing almost everything over the phone. Like, I'm not even having necessarily Zoom meetings with my clients. People are okay, just, my voice in their ear and vice versa. And, I think people are more comfortable doing things remotely now. And I think that's here to stay.
Thank you for your comments. My feeling is that COVID has taught us to balance ourselves, life, work. And I think what it's also told us is that as an employee, I do need to be heard. I do need to have this balance, and I need people to care. So I think that the future is where people will not stay in jobs that they're just satisfied getting the paycheck and doing the work, that they're going to be braver and bolder about finding a place that connects with me, that connects with my passion, that connects with my ability to professionally and personally grow, and who understands and cares about me. So the employer, the business owner who treats people as a commodity, will have to wake up and focus on the employee experiences. This is why we did this session, to help people understand that the employee experience is important in the future. And if you don't see that, you may not be around, or you may not see it soon enough. So now is still soon enough if you start to show you care. So this is me, the passion of me, trying to help connect employees with employers. And I think the employee of the future is going to be braver to love what they do, love where they work. So it behooves people to step up to the plate, to include inclusiveness, to have managers who are people managers, not just technicians, and not just supervisors who feel their job is to micromanage what people are doing. So that's my soapbox, guys. And that's kind of the premise of Rev Up as well. I'm going to open it up now to some questions. If you want to come forward, if maybe you want to raise your hand in the chat box, and Fernanda can see that you have one. There are some questions that people asked. Is there anybody who wants to speak up first as a question? Because I'm going to go look at the questions that people posed. Anybody? Charles, you're showing us yourself. Do you have a comment or a question? I'll have to unmute.
Yes. Yeah, thank you. And thanks for, I think, the invite to be here. And I mean, there's lots, I think, in terms of what Parry raised about the leadership question and the leadership crisis. So that, identifying it not just from the employee experience, but what are the drivers of that? And that's a culture question rather than a systems question. And it just occurred to me as you were talking just this last time, and we've talked about, rewards and benefits and incentives and all that kind of stuff. But I suddenly thought, what's the greatest gift that you can give an employee? And the answer is to hear them, right? For them to be heard. And therefore, and I'm not going to do any pitching, but, so what are the mechanisms that we can actually employ to get that to happen, to have them feel that they're being heard? And so let's throw that open as a question.
Thoughts, comments?
Yeah, I think employees definitely want to feel like their concerns are being heard and taken seriously, because I think that does create a lot of frustration, that there's this disconnect that, leaders, managers, coworkers, whoever, that they don't understand, they don't want to understand what employees are going through, and they don't necessarily want anything to change. They just want to maintain the status quo. So I agree that is something that is very critical for the employee experience and to make a business better. I think when there's openness and understanding, we can all pull in the same direction.
I wanted to add one thing that we haven't really discussed here, but we did discuss sort of pre-call, and that is, what about the new employees who've just joined an organization and never really met anyone? So, my daughter was hired during the pandemic, and she, didn't have the opportunity to go into the office, so everything is remote. And yet, if you ask her if she feels, included and she's part of the company, etc., she'll say absolutely yes, because her department, made sure to profile her in their newsletter. She's part of a book club. She's received nice packages at home. She's been part of what, Helen was alluding to earlier, some of those times when they send you lunch or a little, gift card so that you can go grab lunch and they eat it all together, because when you break bread with people, you're part of that. But her company seems to be doing everything right. But what if you were hired during the pandemic? What if you're being hired next week? What is the company doing for you to really not just onboard you, but onboard you in very bizarre times?
Oh, I'm actually going through this right now with some clients, and interesting that one of the senior level, an executive that we hired, who basically was with the org for about one and a half, not even 2 months when we went remote. So she did mention, like, she felt it harder to bond, right? And because they're in a smaller office in Vancouver and the rest is in Ottawa and Toronto, and normally we get together, we would have everybody come in across the country, you get to meet people. So even within her own small team that she managed, it was harder to kind of get that going. And then we're actually about to bring in a couple more coming up soon. And it's, it's getting, like, talking to marketing and saying, you didn't, first of all, I don't know that they did a great job before that. So I'm like, you have to help along, but it is that from the time you're interacting to applying to right through that whole experience, how are you making it unique? And I think what Charles was getting at too was, like, the whole thing we have touched on a little bit in the comments, is having the voice, is feeling like you belong, you're unique, but you're included. And it's there's highlighting that right now, that what I need, it may not be the same as someone else. And so how do you know? Are you having dialogue? Are you talking to people to get to know them and how they're different, without all, there's still tests you can do, personality and stuff, but it's like, it's conversation, right? Do you know what they do on the weekend? Do you know what films they like? Like, it's just getting back to human nature, having discussion, getting to know people and building the trust. Yeah. And if I could just give one more example of a tough situation to do with layoffs and things like that. In one company, rather than lay off, what they did was they did institute a salary cut reduction, and everybody felt so much better about that. Than no one lost their job, and they did it for a short period of time, and it wasn't a huge amount. because their revenues were cut like to 1/3 of what they were before. So it was really, really a tough time. And so, you know, then it was reinstated. But what they also did was they provided alternate Fridays or something, so that it was extra, not vacation, but you, at least you felt like you could unplug for a bit. And, you know, it kind of offset the salary cut. So it's like, how do you be creative, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, and getting ideas from people. Open up for ideas.
Thanks, Helen. There's one question that was in the Eventbrite registration that I think, you know, hasn't come up, and I really want to make sure we touch upon this. Somebody said companies need to focus on employee experience, but CEOs are focused on the bottom line. These are seen as soft skills and are often dismissed, right? So thank you very much for that comment. And how do we get CEOs to view employees' experience as necessary and not dismiss it as soft skills that can be delegated to HR? So that's opening a big kettle of worms. If I can just make 2 comments on that. I'm hogging the spot here as the host. But I think there are statistics that prove that those companies that care about people, that create that employer experience, have a positive work culture, actually have 2 to 3 times more in their sales and their profit than those that are like the CEO that's described here. So how do we help these CEOs? We educate them. We show them the bottom line is actually better if you are more generous. And I think when we talk about employee experience, if we go back to the kind of philosophy of customer experience, we map out the customer experience. So for Malik and her daughter's experience, somebody mapped that out from day one. And how do we make sure she has this experience? So a strategy is, in your organization, think about what is happening to your employee along the cycle and make sure you have an experience that makes it positive for the company collectively and for each person. So now you guys can say your thoughts.
So yeah, I think investing in employees and their well-being and having people feel connected to the business is critically important to the bottom line, because if you just look at the money that a company spends in recruiting and hiring and training, if you're constantly having to go through that process because it's a revolving door, I mean, that is a lot of time and money that is wasted, that is directly taken out of the time and money and energy that can be spent focusing on the business. So I definitely don't think, I think that the bigger picture is very important. And I think that when you have employees that are engaged, that are you know, supportive of the business that they are a part of, that it does help the business as a whole. And, you know, if someone is passionate about what they're doing, that is going to be communicated to the customer, and the customer is going to then buy into that. And I just think that, you know, focusing on the bottom line in the numbers is, I mean, you can't ignore it, but you can't only look at that, because life, businesses, there's that intrinsic aspect to all of these things that, you know, are so critical to having a business function.
That dollar value, by the way, when people leave, is anywhere from 1.5 times salary to replace that person to 3 times for your salespeople and your executive level. So that's a lot of money that you could be investing a fraction of that to keep people happy, and that will pay for itself.
Hilda, can I take that into a lead up to my comment would be about the same thing you just said. Replacing someone is very expensive. And my focus is on women 40 plus, because that's when women go through hormonal changes, and many show symptoms of fatigue and brain fog due to poor sleep and all that. Now that we work from home, some of the changes that would be good to do in the office are even easier to do at home, because one of the things women request sometimes is flexibility in their schedule. Some of them wake up very early and they want to start work early and finish early, or they may want to have a break in the middle of the day to take a nap. as yes, the time to recover and have energy to finish the work. So these things are, we have to think about that. Too many women are quitting their jobs and their careers because they have no support doing work for 3 to 5 years when they need a few reasonable accommodations. So we need to include women in this age bracket in our heads, in our minds, so we can give them a culture where they feel comfortable talking about their needs and not just hide and say, I can't wait to get rid of this and just stop all the stress.
And you're talking about menopause.
Exactly.
It's Teresa, for those of you who don't know, Teresa speaking, and she has a passion about menopause and supporting women and acknowledging that this is a period of our life where there's some accommodation that might be useful for people who are having symptoms that really impact on their personal and work lives, for sure.
Thank you.
And thank you. Any other thoughts, comments? It's about 20 after, so I think we've got about another 5 minutes, 7 minutes, and then I'll just wrap up to share with you some of the.
So the person who's had hot flashes for 17 years, is she allowed to be next? Not that would get Teresa to laugh. Okay.
Yes. You would
But
know
my
what
mom
I'm
said
talking
she
about.
had them for 20 years, so I'm just hanging on. And because there's men in the room, I'll just let that go. By the way,
Men also have women in their lives, employees, wives, mothers, sisters.
Yes.
It affects all of us, some directly, some indirectly.
Absolutely.
I just
Yes,
wanted to
totally true.
I just want to add that I think the workplace flexibility is important all around today. The millennials of today, they don't want to work 9 to 5. Like the way the world was already moving before COVID was to a point where employers were starting to have to be more flexible when they were hiring younger employees, because they like to work maybe late at night. So being in the office 9 to 5 isn't necessarily a thing, right? For a lot of these people coming into the workforce and that are now actively in the workforce. So I think COVID has just really, it's like we said, it's fast forwarded the world probably 10 years, where people were like, we can't really accommodate this, but now like we're being forced to accommodate this, and it's happening a lot faster. It's happened now, and I think that this is here to stay. The hybrid working is here to stay. I've even noticed a change in the way I work. I used to be like, okay, I go to work at 8:30 to 4:30. When I'm done my day, I try not to work in the evening. Now I find I'm working, at night, but I'll go and take my dog for a walk during the day. And it's, and it's flexibility and it's balance in my life. And I appreciate it more. And I can understand why everybody needs that. And the women in their 40s that need to take a nap for 15 minutes to half an hour, go for it. If you can flex your day and do it at a different time. So I think flexibility for employees is super important right now to get the most out of your employees and to have them appreciate working for you.
And it shouldn't be very hard to do. It's just you need to ask, what hours would you like to work? Would that fit with the rest of the team, the company, the culture? And it's not that hard.
I'm going to let Elizabeth get in. She made her witty comment, but I know there's a question now.
That's
so
okay.
Let's let her ask her question.
For some of us, we've had a home office for 15 years. And I always say I've been lonely at home for even before COVID. So, depression because of staying home and working? Nah, I had to deal with that a long time ago. So, but I just want to say, I joined on today because I love Sarah. I love Minkin Employment Lawyers, and they are my go-to if I have any help, okay? Because sometimes it just all of a sudden comes on you. And Sarah mentioned that sometimes we need to terminate people, and I can tell you in a company our size, it's only if they want to, and it's normally because of children or because of their age or something that is, go. But since COVID happened, within the first month, I had to hire 39 people. I had over 20 people that left and couldn't work, and I needed new jobs and theirs to be done and new jobs. And I had 39 to hire in the first month. And coming this far into COVID, I'm going to tell you that I'm trying to hire right now, and it's not good. I texted my husband yesterday and I said, I have 6 applications. What am I going to do? Like, I have a list of people, and this is in Georgina, but it's a very hard right now. And I just got to say, as far as employee experience, they get me first. Okay, all applicants get me. And I am the sell my company, let them think that they can have a career here. And it's not just a low paying income job. We give them profit sharing. So you're talking about investing in your employees. Well, we've been allowing people to help us so they can think out of the box. And I know as a fact that millennials or young people, no matter whatever they're called, because I think there's another one after that, right? Every 15 months, you've got to change your job. So if I have somebody and I'm doing a review for you and the same thing last year, we got to talk. We got to move you on, right? Because you're not going to stay around if you're not always being challenged. So, and so as soon as they arrive, one of the first things I say is, we're not doing this. We're not doing orientation. And then you leave me. We want to know. Well, I want you to stay, right? I want you to know about internal theft and what might happen when you see an opportunity. Because sometimes people might say, hey, I just changed somebody's windshield wiper. Okay, so that looks good for my mom's car. I'll take it home. No. People lose their jobs. And I explained to them that internal theft is just opportunist, and we want to tell you right off the bat, if you see something, don't drink it. If it's out of a case that broke, don't do it. And so I want to keep you. So now what training do you want? If it's a middle person and they are a manager, I'm like, we have universities, let's put you, what do you want to do? And even with this attitude, we have a hard time finding people, just getting the apps in the door right now. So
is it because these people are frontline, Elizabeth, that so many of them left because they were scared of COVID and catching something? Like, because I know you're a great employer.
So I'm going to 50-50 that, and the fact that they can get money. And until that money is stopped coming in, my applications are going to be.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
It's tough out there.
You're right.
Okay, it's about 3 minutes. I do want to wrap up, and I would really love to thank my guests, Malik, Helen, Sarah, and Perry, for sharing their knowledge. And in doing that collectively, I think we've given you a lot of food for thought. So thank you very much, the 4 of you, because there's me. I'm one of the 5, and I just want to acknowledge that. And then I want to share a couple of comments. Wanted to share with you our upcoming webinars for Talent Talks. We are only doing them once a month now instead of twice a week at one point, which was crazy, but it was first days of COVID. The next one is actually focusing on the hybrid work environment. Get ready now. So we've talked about it. We've alluded to the hybrid work environment from the employee experience. What we want to do is take it a next step further. So on June 16th, we're going to be talking about how to create a wow experience when people actually come back to the office place. So I've got Gay Hamilton, who's going to talk about the IT impacts of working remotely and working in a hybrid solution, as well as a space planner. We're deciding between 2 space planners, and the information that they've got about what does that workplace look like for the future is really good. So if you're interested in learning more about that, join me on June 16th. On July 21st, we're going to talk about performance management, the future trends that are going to help people really improve productivity and enhance their own careers and businesses. So those are the 2 that we've got coming up. And again, special acknowledgements to the East Gwillimbury Chamber of Commerce. These are some of the topics that we've done over the past year: managing HR decisions, impacts of remote work, how to optimize work performance in the new norm, mental exhaustion, how to optimize workplace wellness in challenging times, and recruiting, the do's and don'ts of effective hiring, which Perry was my guest. So that's what I wanted to share with you today. If you want to contact me, you do get a copy of the the webinar. So you'll get a copy of these slides and the recording. So I'm just going to stop this for now. Again, I want to thank my guests, Malik, Helen, Sarah, and Perry. Thank Diane and Fernanda for being my production team, so I don't have to worry about what's going on in the background. And to thank Lauren and her student, her summer student, Krista, for being sponsors of the webinars that we've been hosting.